So there's a point that every ambitious man goes through in life that nobody talks about. And I don't know why people don't talk about this specific thing, but it's what keeps most people at that stage where they don't tend to accelerate where they want to be, and they tend to just go back to the average norm lifestyle that exists. So you have to understand that, like, within the spectrum of life, there's the hyper successful people, and then there's the what I call hyper normies, right? The very, very normal people that live a normal everyday life. They have a normal 9 to 5. They do whatever they can. They have below average health. They're unhealthy. They're eating a bunch of nonsense. They're doing all that, right? Then you have the hyper successful people that took over their health. They do really well. They feel healthy. They're living longer. They're performing better in business and life in general. They have good relationships, all of that, right? Hyper successful people and hyper normies. Now, most of us, we start at hyper normie, right? Because we don't know anything. We don't know what's going on. We don't necessarily know how we want to be able to move forward to get to that successful point, but we have that vision of, okay, I want to become more successful. And you may think everyone's like this, but everyone is not like this. Everyone is not trying to build a better physique for themselves or better health for themselves. People are not trying to, well, everyone wants to make money. They just don't put in the work to be able to go do that. There are a lot of these different things that exist. Now, when you break out of the hypernormie phase and you realize, well, I need to make a change in my life. I need to install better habits. I need to hit the gym more. I need to take care of my diet. I need to start a business, or I need to go into some sort of career field that is going to help me get some freedom in my life. You now break out of that point, and there's this weird, I call it like, it's almost like a gray area where you don't necessarily fit in with the actually, you don't fit in at all with the hypernormie people, right? The very normal, everyday person. But you also are not accepted in the hyper successful communities and the hyper successful bubbles that exist on the other side of the spectrum. So you're sitting here at this point where you're like, well, what do I do now? Right? What path do I go on? It's almost like you're in the gulag. Like, you're just trying to figure it out. You're trying to basically, it's player versus player, and you're over here trying to slay demons, and you're trying to do all this to be able to just keep stepping forward to get to the point where you can finally showcase yourself and be around hyper successful people, right? So I'll give you a quick story. This is pretty much how my life was, and I kind of go in and out of this, right? And so I remember when I graduated from college, even when I was in college, I had a point where I was trying to figure out, like, well, okay, what do I want to do? I definitely want to be an entrepreneur. I was looking at all these hyper successful entrepreneurs. I already had the awareness. So the difference between me at that time and the hyper normie people that were either around me or that existed in general was the fact that I had the awareness that I wanted more, that the current life that I was in was not enough, right? So when I had that hyper awareness, I was like, okay, well, I need to make these changes. I need to change these habits. I have to stop drinking a ton, right? Because I was partying a lot in college. I was going crazy. I was hosting parties with friends, doing a bunch of different things, right? I was I was outside. I was on the streets. I was, with different women, all this and that, like, just enjoying myself. But get to a certain point where I'm like, well, these are not conducive to my goals. So I need to make this change. So I started cutting that down, and I started getting very serious. I started posting a lot more content. That's when I was on Instagram a lot more. I had come back from San Francisco. I had a stint in San Francisco where I was literally just like, I learned how to create content. I grew like to 10,000 followers on Instagram, and I was starting to get some buzz, and things were starting to work out. So I had this little momentum going on, right? But I got to a certain point where I was like, well, who else is around me that's very similar to me? Like, who can I look at? I was going online and I was trying to find different people, but they always seemed like they were so far ahead of me. So it kind of made me lose a lot of direction and just a lot of momentum, right? And so I was fortunate enough to be able to leverage my physique, to be able to get into better circles and know higher level people, because the secret is, with these hyper successful people, you have to find gaps that they have, right? You have to find specific gaps of weakness that they have, and you have to provide them value to be able to be around them. And my value was health, fitness, getting them in the best shape of their lives. I was a walking beacon of somebody who was in shape at that time, and even now up until this point. So it allowed for me to access those circles that I was looking to get into. But, I got to a certain point, because they will accept you in for long enough And these were younger guys too. These weren't like just older guys. These were like young entrepreneurs. And at this point, they're making millions of dollars. And so I got to a point where I was thrown into this community of people who were hyper successful, and I started to succeed myself. But I'm going to be honest with you guys here. Like, I made a lot of mistakes when it came to having shiny object syndrome and switching over, and like, okay, I would work on this business with these two partners. And by the way, those people that I worked on these businesses with, they ended up becoming multimillionaires because they stayed in the path and they kept going. And I had shiny object syndrome. I wanted, okay, now I go start a tech company, right? After having a lead gen agency that's doing 6-7 figure years and like things are moving, I decided to make a change, which then brought me right back to pretty much in the beginning of that post hyper normie phase, right? And so they don't necessarily push you out. And I still have contact with these guys, but you're not in their immediate contact, right? You start to get pushed out because you're not moving as fast as you need to move to keep up with them. So I kept getting to this point where I'd go right back to starting over again and trying to basically grind it out. And I realized there's one important thing that you have to understand. I told you this story for a reason, because every time that I've went back to like post hyper normie and trying to basically figure things out and like trying to accelerate and gain momentum again, I realized that you have to be your biggest cheerleader. You have to. If you're not your biggest cheerleader, nobody else is going to be. So every time that I was going back to this point where I was in this phase of trying to accelerate forward, I would literally have to talk myself up so much. I would have to be such a fanatic of myself, biggest fan of myself, to keep myself going, because let's be real, we're all humans. We want validation from something, and you need to have validation from yourself, right? You can't be trying to get validation from other people for the different achievements that even micro little achievements that you're doing. So you have to be the person that's hyping yourself up consistently. And so I got to a point where I would constantly go right back to this post hyper normie phase, because I would start over with another concept, another community. I'd have a completely different persona, the tech entrepreneur persona from the agency owner persona. Like, I would shift a lot. So it would bring me all the way back and I'd reset. But what constantly kept me going and kept me accelerating fast, even when I went backwards, was the fact that I was always my own fan. I was always the person that was supporting me. Nobody else. You realize this because here's what you're going through right now. If you're watching this video and you're just like, you understand exactly what I'm saying. You're at a point where you maybe have started a business, or you have an idea to start a business. You have an idea to break out of this cycle that you're in. You've taken your health seriously. You're starting to train hard. You're starting to eat cleaner. You're starting to do a lot of these different things. You're starting to get successful habits, and successful habits make you weird to the normal population. The hyper normie finds you extremely weird. You're like an alien to them because you're doing things that don't make sense. They're like, why are you waking up at 5 a.m.? Why are you doing this? Why are you constantly on your phone? They think that you're scrolling, but you're really like creating content. You're communicating with other people to do some business deals, or to maybe get a customer or something along those lines. They will never understand, right? So if you understand what I'm saying here, because they'll never understand, they'll never cheer you on. They may hate on you because they don't like what you're doing, because it goes against their comfort zone. You're moving outside of their comfort zone. And so it gets very lonely for men at this point in time, where like they're not necessarily hyper successful, but they're also not hyper normies either. They already know what they need to do, but then we start to get discouraged at a certain point, because I'm still putting myself in that category. I'm in that gray area still, right? And I've had flashes where I've gone to like the other end of the spectrum, and I've been in those circles, and I've had flashes where I've been in the other side. So I'm like, literally, I went boom, 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 and right back to like the middle, right? So as you're in that process of accelerating past the middle, not only do you have to be a fan of yourself, but you also have to give yourself the grace of knowing like, okay, I'm figuring all of this stuff out now. And I wish there was like a group for guys who were like somewhat doing well, right? But wanted to take the next step forward, but were kind of confused, didn't necessarily have the right group community around them to do it. I don't know why this doesn't exist, but it's usually like super beginner communities or super advanced communities. It's never, ever in between. And there are a lot of people, even my own friends, my own network, there are a lot of us that we've hit six figures. We've done that, but we're trying to hit 7, right? We've had backward spirals. We've gone to 0, came right back to 6 figures, gone back to 0, came right back. We've done that. And we're at a point where we just want to be able to grow even more. So there's a point that you have to get to where you have to understand that I'm accelerating. I'm going to keep accelerating, and there's a journey that you have to take. There are all of these different pitfalls that happen, and you cannot be upset at yourself for falling into these pitfalls. You can't be upset at yourself for missing one move that could get you to the next level. Trust me, I understand. I know how hard it is to be able to be working on something day in and day out and still, lapsing, even in the fitness journey, right? You're going hard, you're doing very well, and then something happens and you have a week where you're just completely off and you're like, man, all these results that I had, you go down. Those moments happen, but you have to be your biggest cheerleader. You have to be the person that's constantly picking yourself back up every time that you fall, because when you get in that gray area, it's very weird. It's a very weird moment. It's like a lonely phase that you have. Nobody else understands what you're doing around you. Nobody, not even the hyper successful people, can give you actionable advice because they're too far ahead. They're way too far ahead. So they can't necessarily tell you the nuances of what you're facing. It's the same with business. Like if you ask somebody who's a multi-billionaire about business and ask them for advice, you think you're going to get really good advice, but you're going to get what worked for them years and years ago. Right? Which doesn't necessarily work now, which doesn't solve the nuance problems that you have now, right? They may tell you, hey, go talk to X amount of people, get customers, but the nuance now is what all these entrepreneurs, all these people are building personal brands. Everybody's building a personal brand. Everybody's getting online. People realize all businesses have social media platforms now, right? People are getting in better shape because they want to look better so that they can present themselves, so that they can be able to acquire more business through how they present themselves and how they look as a respected person. There's so many of these nuances where these hyper successful people who've been hyper successful for a while, they won't be able to actually help you. So you have to get to a point where you're self-sufficient to a certain extent and you're just solving problems. And maybe you're going on YouTube, you're watching a free video and you're trying to figure out how to make it happen. Maybe you get some money and you hire a mentor to be able to help you with some things and help you accelerate faster. A mentor that at least is a few steps ahead of you, not way too far, because I made this mistake before. I've invested in a few mentors and coaches and stuff like that. It gets to a point where if they're too far ahead, they can't really help you at the point that you're in, unless you're a complete beginner and you're at zero, you've never done it before. This is why my first coach that I had for business helped me a lot, because I was a complete beginner. I didn't know what was going on. But as nuances happen, as things change in the business world, in the business landscape, you need to have someone who's just a few steps ahead of you to be able to help you understand how that works, right? Same with fitness, same with everything. You want to have somebody who at least can explain and can help you with the nuances of information that's being distilled in the present moment, right? So as you're accelerating past that process, you have to start to understand, like, I need to be able to get through this. I need to hit escape velocity. That's what I call it. So you go from hyper normie, you're now in the gray area. It's your job to hit escape velocity to finally hit hyper successful, so that then you can skyrocket even more, because now your network becomes vast and now you're able to grow. And so the secret is, one, I'm going to tell you, you have to put yourself out there, right? You have to put yourself out there on social media, especially if you're that person. If you're not that person and you're cool with your 9 to 5, you're good, you just want a very normal lifestyle, I don't judge you, I don't shame you. Good for you. You're at least hitting the goals that you want. But there's a lot of people that are in this audience right now that want more. And I'm telling you right now, you have to find people, and this is the secret to when I'm saying, okay, become a fan of yourself, but also surround yourself with people who are on similar paths. Try to find them. The best way to find them now is through social media. So you have to be able to put yourself out on social media and just document yourself, document your life. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. It doesn't have to be anything edited, but you have to be able to get to a point where people are starting to get around you that are similar to you. That's how it is for me now. I can now have the support system that I need because I have people around me that are literally at the same position that I'm in. So we can bounce ideas around. We can talk about failures that occur. We don't need to front with each other so we seem like we're bigger than we are. We're all similar. So it gets to a certain point where you're like, wait, okay, cool. I have people around me that I can bounce ideas off of that, like, and now you guys are the next class moving forward to become hyper successful people. Right? That's how it usually works. You find this group and then you accelerate with that group and then you become the new class. You ever heard of the PayPal mafia? It's the same thing. I was in the tech space. There were a lot of these groups and pockets of people that succeed. They're almost like classes, right? They're like classes of people, like class of 2015, class of 2000. These groups, these generations of people that enter a specific thing and then they accelerate. It's the same on the internet. You'll see there was a generation of self-improvement YouTubers that like just accelerated forward, and now they're like on like the hyper successful side, and there's a new class that comes in, and that's just how it works. And you have to plug yourself in to these pockets of time and communities that you can now bounce ideas off of, and you can accelerate, and now you don't feel like you're alone. But that's the number one thing you can do right now if you don't have that, is to always be positive to yourself. I'm not gonna lie. Tell yourself, like, bro, get the fuck up and start putting in some work. Like, you can still knock yourself down a little bit and like get yourself going, because as men, we need harsh criticism within ourselves to be able to improve. The feel good bullshit, that's for women, it's not for us. So you can be hard on yourself, but also understand, give yourself some grace that you're at least doing something, that you at least have the awareness to move forward. So that's what you have to understand. That's what you have to internalize, and that's what you have to do if you want to be able to accelerate beyond the gray area. Because I get it. I did a poll recently which blew my mind. I was like, yo, my audience has, it's mostly 25 to 27 plus people, like 30 plus. That's a very older audience. So the concepts that I'm gonna start talking about are going to be very, very specific, not very specific, but they're gonna be more advanced, because you don't need to hear about NoFap. If you're still doing that, go watch a YouTuber that cares about that, like a 18-year-old. If you're 25, 26, 27, and you haven't overcome that yet, you have a long way to go. I'm not judging you, but I'm just saying, like, I'm at a point where I want to learn. I want people who want to learn more things and bigger things and more complicated concepts, identity shifting, understanding reality, understanding like nuances within health and fitness, and like different things that you can do, accelerating your energy, going beyond the basic, okay, caloric deficit, macros, etc. There's deeper concepts to go into, right? So I want to be able to touch on those things. And I think the audience, I'm happy that you guys are actually like solid. You know what I mean? So that's going to be that. But that's what I have for y'all, man. You have to be able to be your biggest cheerleader, and you have to get around people who are at similar levels to you and accelerate with them, and know that this is the gray area. It's meant to be confusing. It's meant to be a little frustrating at times, and very frustrating at times. And you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable for a certain period of time until you've broken out, you've figured out the game, and now you're running laps. And now all of the people who saw you struggling, who didn't understand what you were doing, who were hating on you, are now asking you how you did it. That's the life cycle, right, that you will go through. So I hope this video was valuable for you. I talked a good amount, probably around 18 minutes of a video. But again, if you're interested, I have a link in my description for my free Telegram channel. You can check that out, and just you know, get on there. I talk a lot on there. I do a lot of voice notes. I do a lot of just daily posting just about my thoughts I don't say here on YouTube, just because it can be a little raw. So yeah, man, like, I appreciate y'all, and we're going to keep it pushing. This YouTube community is going to grow, and I'm excited to just keep giving you guys just all the information I know on life, and how to improve, and not just fitness and everything like that, but like life in general, because when you have a lot of life experience, you have a lot of value to give. And I do have a lot of value to give. So I appreciate y'all, and I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.